can feel this excitement in this room. Boy, this is something. I'll tell you. I love this. Thank you. So, normally I come out here and I've got a speech and I read it. This time I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just speak to you from the heart and just talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on right now. You all have seen what's going on in the news, and it's really disappointing and it's frustrating. And I just want to say, we need to get back to a society where we can all have a civil conversation and talk and just get to know one another and understand what it is everybody is excited about and what they're not excited about, and talk about it, right? That's what we need to be doing at this point in our lives. So as I get up here, I want to say thank you to Turning Point. We're at the last stop of the This is the Turning Point tour. As Y-Refi, it's been a real treat and pleasure to be here sponsoring this and be a part of everything that is Turning Point. We really do enjoy the team. We've made some great friends over the last several years. And I want to say thank you to Erica and all of the support that they've given to Y-Refi. So thank you, Erica, and Turning Point. So, we could talk a lot about all the different problems that we have in this country, and boy, I'd be up here for hours doing that. I'm going to focus on one thing, and you saw that on the commercials, and you kind of get the idea of what Y-Refi does. We're here to help fix a problem that does not seem to want to go away, and that's student loan debt. The biggest problem we have in this country right now, frankly, from where I stand, is the debt that we're putting you in. You are the students that I'm talking about. When we cut that walk-in video, it was $1.8 trillion in student loan debt. It's over 1.85 now. That was only cut a few months ago. That's pathetic. It's a burden that we should not be placing on our youth. I can also tell you, if you look at the total student loan debt in this country, the government will tell you it's about 45 million Americans that hold that student loan debt, and that's federal and private. Here's the thing that they don't talk about. The co-borrowers, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, who selflessly co-signed a student loan so that the grandchildren and the children can go to school, get a better education, do all of the right things so that you can have that better life. Well, that's about 70 million people, because about 70% of those student loans have a co-borrower. So that's about 70 million people in this country are affected by student loan debt. Here's how you fix the problem the first way. You get the government out of the lending business. We need to turn that entire issue back into the private markets where it belongs, because if we have learned anything about this country, is that capitalism does amazing things. And if you just give it back to the private sector and let capitalism do what capitalism does, it will fix the problem. And that's why Y-Refi exists today. We figured out how to fix the problem. Thank you. So, if you find yourself in a situation where you've got a student loan, private student loan, where you're paying absurd interest rates and you're just not able to make those payments, give us a call. YRefi.com, look us up, check us out. When you call, you're going to talk to a human being. You're not going to talk to some offshore call center. You're going to talk to someone right down there in Phoenix, Arizona. That's where our entire company is. You get to talk to a human being. No phone trees, no AI, actual people that want to hear your story. We have heard some really horrible stories, and I'll tell you what, I'll share some with you some other time, but I'll tell you, those stories are heartbreaking. They are devastating. I hope none of you find yourself in that situation. I really do hope you don't need our services ever. Okay? So you can make those payments, do it. Get out of debt quickly. So the other reason we started Y-Refi is, we believe, again, in capitalism, entrepreneurship, innovation. And with that, we decided, my partner and I, decided we're not going to take any institutional capital. So we fund our company through what's called an accredited investor. People just like you and me, your parents, my parents, people out there that want to invest and do well by doing good. They don't want to be in the stock market because, frankly, they're tired of the volatility, the chaos, the crazy. So we offer fixed interest rates to our investors. You've probably seen our endorsements dating back to Larry Elder, Charlie Kirk. I could go all the way back several years now. We've been paying those interest rates for a long time. And it is true, it does work. And what I would encourage is, I'll leave you with an idea. If you're an accredited investor, you're out there listening online, I've given this idea before, so let me share it again. You know, we calculate interest daily and make monthly payments of interest only to our investors. So imagine for a second you take and you invest $100,000. The monthly interest income is a little over $800 a month, okay? Maybe you take some of that and donate it to Turning Point. You're here because you believe in the Turning Point mission. You're watching online because you believe in the Turning Point mission. If you can believe in the Y Refi mission, invest that $100,000, take it and invest it. You get a little over $800 a month. Send $400 a month to Turning Point, or $500, whatever is comfortable for you. Take the rest and give it to another charity. And in 5 years, you get your $100,000 back. That's pretty cool. It's kind of a unique idea. So take that idea and think about it. If you have any questions, you want to learn more about our investment opportunity, you want to learn more about our mission, look us up at investyrrefi.com. So I'm going to end here. I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. But before I do, I want to say you got some really cool speakers tonight. And first up is going to be Joe Bob. I had the pleasure of going on tour with Joe. He's back there, and we were talking. And he's going to come out here and give you a really good, entertaining time. And he's a good guy. Who here knows Joe Bob? You guys watched him online? Joe Bob, right? I went on tour with him a while ago. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, so I'll end on this. God bless America. God bless you. God bless Turning Point. God bless America again. And go Donald Trump. Let's fix this problem and get this country back on track. Thank you, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and remove your hats for the singing of the national anthem.
I love the energy, Turning Point. Now, I'm going to invite you to pour that energy into song as we celebrate our great nation. This is our national anthem. I'll start us off. Here we go. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Amen. God bless America.
Please welcome Chapter President Jacob Gartrell.
Hello, University of Idaho. How are we doing tonight? All right, I have a few things to say to you before we kick off tonight. First things first, all of you have a job tonight. I want you guys to take a second and look at the production we have here tonight. Look at the crew members, look at the University of Idaho staff, look at the local TPUSA volunteers, the tours team, and especially the Moscow PD. Your job tonight is to go up to each and every single one of them, shake their hand, and thank them. You do not see how many hours and how many months go into productions like this. This does not happen overnight. So your job is to thank each and every single person here tonight who in any way had anything to do with this tours team. Second, as you all walked in, you received a few things. First, you received a little leaflet with a QR code. That QR code is going to check your voter registration. Our whole goal here with TPUSA is to make sure that each and every single one of you know your rights and to exercise your rights. That voter registration card is going to tell you whether or not you're registered to vote, and if you are, your job is to go vote. Second, if you're not registered, register and then go vote. Those are your jobs tonight. Thirdly, another thing you saw as you walked in, at the literature table along the way, there was a little pamphlet for the Women's Leadership Recruit. That is in San Antonio, Texas on July 5th through 7th. Every single one of you women are invited to that, and we'd love to see every single one of you there. Now finally, before we get going with tonight, I have one last favor to ask of you guys. As you guys all know, we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of America. We are in the home stretch for the school year, and we are about ready to kick off the summer of 250th anniversary of America. Your job tonight is to kick it off with one big cheer. So every single one of you has a rally sign in your chair. Your job is to pick up that rally sign. And we're going to kick off the 250th anniversary of America summer with one big cheer on three. 1, 2, 3, America!
Yes, he did. He's off stage. I got it.
That's too good. Joe Bob, that's too good.
For the last 3 years, I got to tour the country with my friend Charlie as his opening act. I think initially some people thought it was a little odd that Charlie Kirk was bringing a comedian on the road with him. But Charlie loved to laugh, and he understood better than anyone the power that laughter has.
First up, comedian, Turning Point contributor, and host of Turning Point Tonight, Joe Bob.
They're allowed to come into the event, and if they disagree, we will give them a microphone.
These are the same people that tell you if you pay more tax money, they can change the weather.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome
Joe Bob. Joe Bob.
Joe Bob.
Joe Bob.
Joe Bob.
Joe Bob. Joe Bob.
Joe Bob. Joe Bob.
What is going on, University of Idaho?
Seven of 10. What is going on, University of Idaho? Now, the first thing that a lot of you are probably thinking is Joe Bob. Is that his real name? Joe Bob is legally on my birth certificate. I have not made a joke yet. What happened was one grandpa was Joe, the other one was Bob. My parents couldn't figure out which one to name me after, so they decided to make high school very difficult for this guy. But when I'm in the great state of Idaho, it's still a really weird name. I do, if you know any Joe Bobs, I probably have more teeth than them. That's how you have a brown guy with a hillbilly Alabama backwoods name. You know, you guys are way more excited than I was anticipating. How about a round of applause for you for getting out here on a Tuesday night? Yeah. So,
I originally was going to show a slide to start off, but let me actually do the bit that led to this slide. If you know any Joe Bobs, you probably know that we're not great at math. Us Joe Bobs not known for being good at math. It was always the word problems for me. I never understood the word problems. Right? They would never be realistic. They weren't believable. I would read a problem and it would start off, Jim has 14 watermelons. What the hell is Jim doing with 14 watermelons? Right? It wasn't realistic. It wasn't believable. If they wanted me to believe the problem, it would have started off, Devontae has 14 watermelons. Oh, cut the crap, University of Idaho. You all knew what you came to. There's some people that are very uncomfortable over here. So, let's make them feel okay. What if the problem started off, Aiden has 14 food allergies. Juan Pablo has 14 stolen bicicletas. I don't know. Deepak hasn't used deodorant in 14 days. All right, I'm done. Ling Ling has caused 14 traffic accidents. I think we covered all of them, right? So I did that little routine at a Turning Point tour stop in Berkeley, California. Yeah. Which then prompted this headline from the Daily Californian. Joe Bob, a far-right comedian and host of Turning Point Tonight, was the first speaker to take the stage with a number of racist and homophobic jokes. Idaho, I'm here to tell you that this is a wild misrepresentation of my humor. My jokes are also misogynistic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic, ableist, elitist, climate denying, and therefore also bigoted. If there are any journalists in the room, please document that accurately. You know, it is interesting. We are in a little bit of an interesting time. So, rather than just continue to do jokes, I actually like to talk about something that is worth talking about, especially now in the conservative movement. Not to say we're not going to laugh along the way, but it's a difficult time politically. Some might say it's World War XI. Some of you are up on your news. But I'd like to start off with some good news, but then also some constructive feedback from a very, very normal guy who's looking at things in a very normal way. The good news is that if you're a conservative right now, this is the best chance to win back the culture, yes? The reason is because the last 50, 60 years, right, liberals have been more normal than they are today. 50, 60 years ago, liberals, they might disagree with us on a lot of things, but they were still pro-America. They still believed in the founding. They still believed in the American experiment. I remember JFK said, ask not what your country can do for you, but instead what you can do for your country. A totally different mindset. Fast forward several years, you have the mayor of New York City, who's a Ugandan Muslim communist, would say something in Arabic. I don't know what he would say. Alhamdulillah. Oh, that's going to get me in trouble. All right. I blame you. But the thing is, the left is just currently a bunch of clowns. And we all can see that. They like illegals more than they like Americans. They're okay with massive fraud as long as you have the right skin color and are from a small African nation and may or may not eat dogs in the park. They love I practiced this. MMIWG2SLGBTQQIA+. Dang it. I lost my train of thought. See, okay, so here's the thing. When I was growing up, we had a term for that. We just said gay. And I know you here have a similar term for the word gay, Boise State. Who do we hate? I gotta stop doing that to the rival schools because we're gonna be at Boise State like next semester. But the thing is, the libs are in such a terrible position that they are squandering every sense of normalcy, which is a good thing for us. But here's the thing. We still have to win. It's not just an easy handover. This should be a layup, but we do have to win the culture. What does that actually mean? Quite frankly, we have to be more normal. I recognize that that's kind of an obvious thing, but in the modern political climate, I know all of you watch the news, I know all of you have the internet, less easy than you might think. Unfortunately, sometimes being normal in the modern world, especially in the comment section, is not as easy as one thinks. Now, the beauty of conservatism is that those of us on the right, we do not have like a monolith of a mindset. We are not sheep, right? We don't do what the libs do, which is just repeat the phrase, Joe Biden isn't senile. Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. The border is secure. Lie after lie after lie. Tim Walz isn't gay. We question everything. We do our homework and we come to a conclusion that we believe is the truth, which is the best part about conservatism. We are not easily swayed, but that does come with responsibility. Some of the difficult parts of building a winning conservative coalition are the same reasons that make us great, the same reasons that set us apart. In progressive culture, one of the greatest strengths of conservatism is going against the tide. However, one of the biggest weaknesses is also going against the tide. The difference is, why are we doing it? If we're going against the tide in good faith to try and seek the truth, that's great. But if we're going against the tide specifically so that we can go against the tide, that's where we end up in a difficult situation. I was blessed to spend a decent amount of time with Charlie. And of the many things I could say about him, one of his biggest things was debating in good faith, having good faith dialogue, believing that the other person was going to take what you said in good faith because you were speaking in good faith. He revered good faith. When Charlie was assassinated, we saw the left completely destroy any semblance of good faith. They took him out of context, they lied about him, they smeared him, which was disgusting, but it's also what we could expect. Bad faith actors doing exactly what bad faith actors do. Why? Because they crave attention. They want power. They will do anything for power, including lying about one of the greatest people that I knew. All because they wanted power. Now, on the right, we're seeing the positive trait of investigation and all this sort of stuff, but be used currently to the extreme, in many ways in a negative. Holding a rebel point of view is totally fine if you're doing it genuinely, if you're doing it in good faith. But if you're holding a rebel stance purely because it's cool in the comments section, that doesn't actually help anyone. For example, you might be familiar with this saying, I say potato, you say potato. Nobody says potato. I've never met a single person that says potato. And if someone does say potato, they're doing it, in my opinion, for attention, for clout. Okay, so why does this matter? Well, the right is comprised of people with differing ideas. That's been clear from the get-go. We have internal arguments. And when those differing ideas are presented earnestly, presented with good faith, it actually helps us, it benefits us, it strengthens our resolve. However,
When we come at arguments in bad faith, even on the right, it tears the right apart. The edgy comments on social media that'll get 12 likes on Instagram. Attention is the most attractive thing to so many people, and pride is the most difficult sin to overcome because of it. But winning requires unity. Charlie and Turning Point have been a massive component of the unity of the right. But it also takes work. It takes discernment. In the age of technology, you got to remember that not everybody is a TV character or a video game character. We need to recognize that if we seek truth in good faith, we will find it. But if we seek truth, and I use quotation marks, in bad faith, you're going to find people just looking for attention. The greatest truths are often quite simple when it gets down to it. So where are we? The current landscape is rather sticky. Nobody's shy about that. But if we keep good faith, we'll be able to win the day. To summarize in about 3 points, the left is in total shambles. I flew in here from Seattle this morning, and I kid you not, there were tampons in the men's bathroom, in case I started my period. Number 2 is we got to continue to seek truth, guided by good faith. And number 3 is we have to reject the urge for attention's sake. The comment section does not dictate what the truth is. Mob rule does not dictate what the truth is. Remember, engage with caution. If you wrestle with a pig, you both get dragged into the mud and the pig likes it. Putting it simpler, if you're walking down the street and somebody's yelling at a mailbox, if a group of people start to gather around and say, well, they're actually making good points, it doesn't change the fact that they're yelling at a freaking mailbox. So I appreciate you sticking around that with me. I think that's a very important distinction that we have to make in the conservative movement. So I've got a minute or two left. Is it okay if I tell you my favorite story about Charlie? Yeah. Okay. So as you may have guessed from the beginning of this, I'm the resident smart aleck at Turning Point, which makes me a liability. Just so you know, sometimes, for no other reason, for my own amusement, I'll go on Instagram and I'll type the hashtag LGBTQ, and I'll comment, that's gay. So that's the kind of person I am. Okay. A couple months before Charlie was killed, I did a video, and it was a pretty edgy video. Now, I didn't think anything of it. I was just going to post it to my Instagram, but I ended up sending it to a producer at Turning Point. And the producer, he didn't have social media, so I knew he wasn't going to see it, but I also knew he'd like the joke. The producer texted me back after watching, and he said, bro, that's hilarious. Also, do not post that. It turns out he sent it to his boss. He sent it to his boss. She sent it to Charlie. So this joke that I didn't think anything of made it all the way to the top. Had I known, I would have just sent it to him myself. I'll tell you guys what the joke is. We all remember Sydney Sweeney and the American Eagle controversy, yes? Were we asleep? You guys remember the controversy, yes? Libs put us in a terrible position, having to defend the idea that Sydney Sweeney is hot. So there was a bunch of videos that were getting floated around. They're white supremacists, they're Nazis, all of these ridiculous things. But there was one video that was so absurd, I couldn't help but make a reaction video to it. And it was this video, this guy was filming, and it was this girl who happened to be black. And she was standing in front of an American Eagle, and the guy said, hey, do you want to go in that store? And she said, I can't go in that store. I'm black. To which I said, I think she might be right. I don't think American Eagle accepts EBT. Hey, what she said was worse. Get a hold of yourselves. So that's the video that made it all the way up to Charlie, and Charlie texted back, do it. But it doesn't stop there. The higher-ups at Turning Point were still a little bit squeamish on that one. And so they said, hey, we have to have a disclaimer. And I was like, a disclaimer? Like, yeah, we want everybody to know that you're joking. I'm like, I'm clearly joking. It's an absurd thing to say in response to something absurd that somebody else said. I'm like, yeah, we have to have a disclaimer, though. I texted back, that's gay. So I didn't want a disclaimer, but I knew I had to follow the rules, and so I sent my own disclaimer to the group chat. I said, disclaimer, Charlie Kirk himself wrote this joke. But he made me say it because I'm a Brown. And Charlie texted back, perfect. Guys, can you promise me these three things? You're in for a great evening, but promise me this. Never stop fighting for truth, yes? Never stop fighting for freedom, yes? And never stop fighting for this country, yes? University of Idaho, thank you guys so much. You're in for a treat with Matt and Michael. See you later. God bless America. Thank you.
Who are you?
My name is Charlie Kirk, and I love America.
Why are you here?
Because I love talking with people I disagree with.
What have you done for your country?
Started an organization that's now on 1,000+ campuses to save the greatest culture and country ever to exist. I go around universities and have challenging conversations because that's what is so important to our country, to find our disagreements respectfully. I love talking to people I disagree with. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That's when civil war happens.
I really respect, and I think you don't agree with me on a lot of stuff, but I really respect that you'll have a dialogue. How do you think we get more people that can argue like on both sides of the aisle?
I think this event is a great example of it, right? I think that this event is we need to have differing opinions. We need to have people that don't share the same worldview and see which one is better and try to find common bond. You should have your own discussions like this every day. You should try to model it, try to have, back and forth. And that's what makes the country strong and great, civil dialogue.
The enemies of civilization thought that they could stop Charlie Kirk's movement. In reality, they have not even stopped his lecture tour.
Charlie was a truly great man. Great in personal virtue, great in achievement, great in his talents. He was a builder, he was an organizer, he was a fighter. Charlie was a patriot. He loved America, he fought for her every day, he died for her. Everyone who knew him, and so many who did not know him personally, could tell that he was destined to be the President of the United States one day.
Please welcome Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles.
Come to Idaho more often. Look at all these beautiful faces. I am so glad to be with all of you. I'm very sorry for the over 1,000 people who did not make it in the room tonight, but who wanted to be here. I really want to thank...
Can we sit down?
No. I'm too energized.
Let's sit down.
Should we? Okay. All right.
Anyway, continue.
I really want to start out by thanking Erica and the entire TPUSA team for the invitation. I want to thank all of you who have turned out here, done such a great job to carry on Charlie's legacy, clearly care a lot about America, want America to continue to grow and be strong so that we can beat all the libs. There's one person I'm very sorry is not here tonight, James Comey. I'm really sorry. I don't know if you caught the news, James Comey, former FBI director, is now under indictment for threatening the President of the United States. I call that a very good start. I want Hassan Piker arrested. I want all of the elected officials, the Democrats, the media figures who have called for violence against conservatives, I want them to be prosecuted. I want them to know that will not stand in America. We've got a great start with this administration, and we need a lot more of it. Anybody you want to arrest?
Ditto to all that. That's all I got for tonight. Usually I do these college talks, and I've always just been by myself, but it gets exhausting. And so you bring Michael along. He likes to talk way more than I do, so it makes it a lot easier. I just sit here and he can go. The one thing I think I look in this room, which is full, I hear out in the world that the right, conservatives are fighting with each other. They're demoralized. They're depressed. We're losing. That's what I hear from the media. That's what I hear on social media. When I walk into rooms like this, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like we're pretty excited, right? It feels like, and we should be, and I think we should be. And we're in a spot right now in the culture where we should be looking at building. This is what Charlie was all about. This is what TPUSA was about and is still all about, which is building. It's one thing to fight the left, to make fun of the left. That's a lot of fun. We should keep doing it because it's so much fun. But then the next step of that is that we have to start building culture, building institutions, and that's what I'm excited about. I think that's what you guys are excited about too.
There's a lot of fight left. I was listening today to NPR, which I'm very ashamed of. I think NPR might even be in the House tonight. But I was very ashamed of this because, listen, I've been on NPR before, but NPR is the establishment liberal outlet. And what was so amazing, this is after the White House Correspondents Dinner, the most recent time a left-winger decided to do harm to a conservative. On NPR today, they were talking about how radicalized this shooter had become. And they said, let's go through all of his old social media posts, and you could see the modern left in real time realize how radical they've become. Because by the end of the interview, they said, it's really weird. We're looking through all these social media posts, and it turns out this guy just believes everything that we believe. So what does that tell you about yourself? We know there was a survey came out last year. 56% of Democrat respondents said that they would justify violence against President Trump. We know that over 1 in 4 very liberal people in America justify or excuse political violence against conservatives. We know that they're 8 times as likely as conservatives to support political violence in general. The problem that we have right here is not some fringe lunatic element on the left. The problem that we have is that the fringe lunatics are the mainstream left. That is the problem. That is why you have Democrat senators, congressmen, mayor of New York campaigning with lunatics like Hassan Piker. These people need to be ostracized from polite society. They do not represent the mainstream of America. They do not represent all these beautiful, good-looking, vibrant young patriots in the audience tonight. They are truly, it's a fetid, ugly, cancerous growth on the body politic, and it's not just the fringe. It's the mainstream Democrats, which is why they need to be run out of political power entirely. We have to win. We have to hold on to power. We have to build. We need more laws. We need more institutions, and we need all of these beautiful, bright young faces to go up and to become the real political power in the United States.
And also, the worst thing about left-wing radicals is, they're violent, they're evil, they're soulless, and they're such corny dorks, too. That's the one thing you take from this guy, the latest attempted assassin. You look at his manifesto, and it's all the mainstream Democrat talking points, but it's just so lame.
It's Reddit. It's Reddit.com.
It's very Reddit-coded. I mean, they don't make...
No.
At least Ted Kaczynski wrote a manifesto. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They don't make the manifestos like they used to. That's one problem.
No, they do not.
And you know that radicalism is much more of a problem on the left because if they want right-wing radicals, what we've learned recently is they have to pay to create them. So who in this room is getting any of the SPLC money? Are you guys cashing in? Anybody? You should be. I mean, I'm upset they're not paying me. I mean, I have a profile in Southern Poverty Law Center. We found out there, if you guys are not keeping up on the news, Southern Poverty Law Center, big-time left-wing activist organization, and it came out last week that they have been paying fake right-wing radicals so that they could then use that as a pretense to persecute conservatives, but also to fundraise off of it. And I was kind of upset because I have a whole profile on their site. They talk about how hateful I am.
I mean, you've been saying racial slurs for free for 10 years now.
For no compensation.
No, I'm joking about it. But they got a very good return on investment because the SPLC, when Matt says that they spent some money creating neo-Nazis and white supremacists, it wasn't a little bit of money. They spent $3 million in just the last few years. They were funding the leaders of these groups, and they made many tens of millions of dollars. They're worth over $800 million on top of that because they had a problem. There simply was not right-wing radicalism. So they had to go invent it. They got an arbitrage opportunity. They made a ton of money out of it, and now they've been exposed. So the question is, what do we do about that? The first thing, obviously, is we want to cash in on that and get the SPLC money ourselves. If they're not going to send it, what do? It seems to me what we have to do, we have to hold these people accountable. They committed fraud. They committed crimes. They have poisoned our body politic. They have smeared ordinary, good, normal conservatives as all sorts of miscreants and fascists and monsters. Did you see the protest outside?
It was a little low energy. I was kind of disappointed.
It was low energy.
Low energy. I want more.
It was...
Put some effort into it.
You know, the protest outside, I'm told, I only saw this secondhand. It was rainbow colored. I didn't know they had that in Idaho, but it was rainbow. It was LGBT. They had, I think, lesbians kissing, but it's not like the nice way. You know, it was not that you should, it was not, you don't want to look at it. And there were, I don't know, half a dozen of them or something like that. And they were talking about trans rights. And I thought, hold on. I said, is the left, do they realize it's not 2021 anymore? Is that still a thing? Is transgenderism still a thing? Is it really? I thought that was all over. I thought we were moving on to, I thought you did that whole movie about it.
I mean, I thought I gave the answer at the end of the movie. We have the answer to what is a woman.
A few people didn't get it in Idaho, I guess.
Yeah, I thought, well, here's what we've learned about that transgenderism is totally defeated intellectually. I mean, that happened from the first second. They've been defeated, the trans ideology has been defeated in the courts. It's been defeated in the state house in many different states. So, you know, legally and culturally and politically, but also on the left, they can't let go of it. You can't abandon that because what was the point of the trans ideology to begin with? Well, it's like the ultimate statement. It's the ultimate middle finger to God, basically, saying, I am my own God. Reality is whatever I say it is. And leftism, at the end of the day, is relativism. It is the rejection of objective truth. And so if they say, yeah, you know what, never mind, we had that wrong, well, they're admitting that there's an objective truth out there, that there's some kind of reality that they have to acquiesce to, they have to assent to. And if they admit that, then pretty soon their whole project comes tumbling down, so they can't admit it. They have to stick it out.
Their denial of objective truth, though, they've really taken it to another level. I don't know, are you familiar with our Somali representative, Ilhan Omar? Okay. So this was very odd. Now, I majored in history in college, but, you know, I don't know, I stayed up late, probably partied too much, so I missed this part in history. Did you know, I learned this from Professor Omar, that there were 11 world wars? Did you know that?
I learned that as well. That's why I say, well, if we've already done I'm non-interventionist, but if we've already had 11, let's do one more, make it 12. I like even numbers.
It's a nice even number. I agree.
That's all I'm saying.
I agree. Is there, you know, we've covered so much in our brief time, and I'm very excited to get to questions. So if you do have questions, get ready, line up, make them really, really good, make them really smart. We've covered all these things. The libs, obviously, on the weird sex stuff, they couldn't beat us at the ballot box. They got absolutely destroyed in November of 2024, in large part because of you and because of the amazing work of our friend Charlie Kirk, the amazing work, the man who made the winning difference, according to Susie Wiles at the White House. So the libs got absolutely destroyed at the ballot box. So they became violent. They became even more absurd than they already had. Obviously, there's this issue of foreign policy, which, you know, it always crops up. You know, there's a lot of disagreements on the right about that. But is there any one issue heading into the midterms, heading into 2028, that the right can unite around?
I mean, America first should be the thing that we're uniting around. That's the thing we should all be able to agree. And that's also an area where, by the way, we've had some major victories. I mean, the Trump administration has had major victories on that front. Shutting down the border is a huge deal. And listen, I'm as critical. I fully believe that no matter who's in power, if they're doing things you disagree with, you should criticize them. You should speak up, because we're Americans and that's what we do. And so I've criticized the Trump administration where I think they deserve it. But this defeatism, this doomerism you get from some on the right, where they say, well, you know, we shouldn't even voted for Trump. Well, what was the point? It's like, well, okay, so we have President Kamala Harris. I mean, do we need to explain why that would be worse than what we currently have? And if we were to go through the wins, one of the big ones is that we did shut down the border, and for years and years and years, that was the banner that we marched under as conservatives: shut down the border, shut down the border, shut down the border. Then it's like we do it, and then we immediately move on, like, okay, that doesn't really matter. Let's find something else to complain about.
Because conservatives can never be happy. It's like one of the most charming things about us is we're always just, it's a fallen world. We're never going to get utopia. You communists are always promising you utopia.
I'm a very happy person. I don't know.
You're
I don't
Mr.
know about
Jolly.
You. I'm known for that.
He skips down the hallway at the Daily Wire.
It's true.
He does. But, you know, to your point, Matt, on immigration, look, we all want 10 million deportations a year. We all want 20 million. There are a lot of illegal aliens that the left let in. But just on closing the border, you had 3 million illegals entering every year under Joe Biden. Simply closing the border, those 3 million people are not coming into this country. On top of that, you have 700,000 plus formal deportations in the first year of the second Trump admin. On top of that, you had at least 1 million self-deportations, very well recorded by multiple agencies. So you've got, say, 2 million deports, 3 million who don't come in. You're talking now about a net delta of 5 million illegal aliens. Kamala Harris wins, you have 5 million more illegals in this country. Trump wins, you have 5 million fewer. And you can go down point by point, you know, looking at the economy, all-time stock market highs, good tax cuts, wherever you want to look, the tangible results of winning cannot be overstated. And the people who tell you, give up, stay home, it's no big deal, these are the people who are handing our country over to the left, and they're really excited because then they can whine a little bit more. I don't want to whine. I want to win. I know Charlie wanted to win. I know all of you want to win. We're going to win in 26, and we're going to win in 28. And we're going to keep winning after that.
I think, do we want to start taking questions?
No, I want to wax philosophic for 3 more hours. I had poetry I was going to recite. We were going to do that song and dance number.
I'll sing just, I know there was some singing out here before. I'll sing just one verse.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, that's too bad.
I've been told someone told me once I have the singing voice of a dying moose. Which I think, is that a compliment, maybe? Yeah. I don't know. Moose are a majestic creature.
What's the singing voice of a living moose? I don't know. Well, maybe we'll find out. I do see we have some questions over there.
Hey, guys, my name is Taylor. I'm from Bonners Ferry. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for coming all the way out here. My dad and I watch you almost daily on the Daily Wire. We love you guys.
Thank you.
So my question is this. How do we keep the right together on a small town level? For the people who say we won and that's it, they don't feel like showing up to their local Club America or TPUSA college chapters, and they don't feel like they have to show up to events like this. What do we do, and why is that happening?
Well, I think you're exactly right that, and it's a cliche, but it's true that politics are local. And I think one of the dangers these days is that, you know, we're very focused on issues on a national scale. We're all on social media, so we're very plugged in at the national level and even the international level. But when it comes down to it, if we're going to make any kind of real changes in our community, it has to start at the community level. And I mean, it's an easy answer, but in order to do that, you need organization. I mean, this is what Charlie was. This is why he was a one-of-a-kind talent, in that he had the organizational abilities, but he also had the public speaking abilities. He had the charisma, and that's
the debating abilities, the fundraising abilities.
Right. He had all those things. Yeah. But we have to pick up that mantle, and that's why organizations like TPUSA are so important, because it does come down to organization. We need organizations on the local level to mobilize people to get involved on the local level, and then that from there you get out to the national level.
What's the most local form of politics? What's the basic unit of politics? The basic unit of politics is the family, and I think the family is a good analogy here, because you form a family. You know, mommy and daddy get married, and maybe you have a kid, and then what? Do you just say, okay, that's over, we had the kid, good luck, kid, I hope you feed yourself later? No, of course not. To have a family, you have to tend to that family every day. You got to talk to your wife every day, even when you don't want to talk to your wife. You got to play with your kid every day. You got to change the diapers. You got to feed the kid. You have to tend to this all the time, and that's the basic unit.
I don't change diapers.
Never. Men don't change diapers. You got to get your wife to change the diapers every day.
It's a burden. I mean, 6 kids. I've never changed a single diaper. It's fine.
But you need.
My wife. It's.
You have a harder job because you're constantly on your wife. You say you got to do this. You got to do that.
I'm always pointing out the dirty diapers. Like that one smells. That one.
But you have to do that all the time, because otherwise it's going to spin out of control. And it's the same thing with politics. And the real struggle for the right, is that the left just does this all the time. They're well-funded. They don't do anything else. They don't believe in heaven. They don't have good family lives. They just do politics, and they just want to run your life, and they want to ruin your life. And so we have to be twice as vigilant as they are. But if you wouldn't neglect your family, you can't neglect your local community, because when you neglect those two things, the national politics aren't going to matter.
Thank you guys very much.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Michael. I listen to your guys' show pretty much every day instead of doing my homework. So it's great to see you guys in person. Michael.
Which one of our shows?
Pretty much both of you every day.
My man. All right. But if you had to pick one that you watched a little more.
I love both of you, but Michael's closer to my heart.
Let's go. Oh, wow.
Well, Matt, you got me into politics, so. So I wanted to ask, specifically, Michael, you said that the right-wing civil war really only exists in the podcast class, and that it's not really substantively important politically. So I think that evidenced by the Florida governor's election right now, that the right-wing civil war is real. So I wanted to ask you what you think about that Florida governor's election, if you've been keeping up with it, and specifically about the candidate James Fishback.
I have, yeah. No, I've followed him a little bit because he's much more a social media figure than a traditional political candidate. But doesn't the Florida governor's election kind of prove my point? Because I'm not saying there's no connection between the political podcast class and the actual politicians. Obviously, we would cancel our shows if that were the case, if we didn't have any connection. But a lot of it, I think, is kind of insular and abstracted, and a lot of it's petty and personal. But when you mention the Florida governor's race, it seems to me that Byron Donalds is running away with it, isn't he? It's not a close race.
Not among young people.
Well, but among the people who are voting, he is winning. Right? Aren't the polls like 90-2 or something?
Not that close, but pretty, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess this is exactly my point. I haven't followed James Fishback's commentary closely enough to weigh in on every tweet, but he is very much playing for an online crowd, and Byron Donalds, it seems to me, is playing very much for an on-the-ground crowd of voters, and Byron Donalds is going to win like 300% of the vote if the election were held today. So to me, that's my point. Look, I love online trolling. I started my political career with a blank book called Reasons to Vote for Democrats, so I'm all for it. You know, it's a lot of fun. But when we're actually looking at the connection between those two things, the guys who are on the ground, passing out palm cards, speaking to kitchen table issues, speaking in a way that attracts moderate voters as well as the conservative base, I think those guys are still running away with elections. If you told me that the Florida governor's election were 50-50 or that James Fishback were ahead, I'd say, I guess my thesis is wrong. But as of now, and you know how much it pains me to say this, I hate to do it, but I hate to say I told you so.
So my point is
Can I say one thing? I know you didn't ask me.
I did.
I mean,
you're in it.
No, I think that, well, on specifically on the point, I agree with Michael on the Florida governor's race, but on the point of the podcast Civil War and how it reflects in the larger culture, I think that, and this is to Michael's point, the podcast Civil War, the part of that has no relevance to the broader culture is the personal part of it. So it does get very, very personal. And a lot of the, I'm a podcaster. I can't even keep track of it, but it's these constant like fracturing, and then you've got one faction, and then that faction is fighting, and then this faction over here is fighting. And so much of it is really centered around personalities, ego, the fight for attention, the fight for audience, competitiveness among, people in media, fighting over that. That's what a lot of it is. And that stuff has nothing to do with anyone in the real world at all. And I think people in the real world are tired of that. They don't want to hear about it. It's boring. It's petty. It's ridiculous. However, there is maybe at the very core of that a debate about actual issues, and those actual issues do matter to the broader culture, and they certainly do matter to conservatives. Issues like foreign policy. I mean, that these kinds of things are at the core of the kind of podcast Civil War. It's just that they're buried under all this like personal squabbling bullshit. But if you could get out of all that, you can get down to the core of it. And those are the issues that are much more important and that I think are actually interesting.
Yeah, and I think my point is that I'm 17 years old. I think the Overton window is shifting towards this more America first side. I think among my generation, we're sick of all foreign influence in our country, whether it be China, Mexico, or Israel, or any other nation. Am I right? They all agree with me. So I think right now, it might not be time for a sort of James Fishback figure to take power, but when Generation Z comes into power, I think someone like that is a lot more fitting.
Yeah, I wonder, because it's actually very encouraging that especially young people are shaking up the way that the GOP talks about issues, whether we're talking about foreign policy or whether we're talking about economic policy. The notion that the economic policy should be oriented toward the common good was completely verboten when I was a kid in the Republican Party. The fact that those classical elements of political philosophy are back, I think is terrific. The weakness for young people, though, when they're getting very excited about politics for the first time, is sometimes a failure to recognize that those debates have been around before. The America First Committee, which argued against entering into World War II, and which was joined by John F. Kennedy and William F. Buckley Jr., that was 80 years ago. I mean, these are not exactly new issues. The question of whether or not America is an empire or should just be an isolated republic, these are debates that go back to the early 19th century, if not the late 18th century. These are questions that are constantly changing because of changing circumstances, but they're eternal political questions. Every nation has interests. Every nation has interests around the world. We're going to pursue those interests around the world. Sometimes we're going to extend ourselves too much. Sometimes we're not going to intervene enough. I mean, this is why politics is not some stupid abstraction like the left wants to believe, but politics is this practical art that requires judgment every step of the way. So I entirely agree with you. The answer that we're going to have over our relationship with China, Israel, Russia, Canada we need to divorce from, but that's a separate issue. America's evil top hat. But even Canada we're going to have to deal with. The way that we engage with that is going to be constantly changing. But it's going to always be grounded in the real world, the actual interests of the United States. And so to Matt's point, when we just speak about these things in ways that are going to get lots of clicks on social media, I don't think that is ever really going to translate into the real political order because the incentives are different. People get attention on the internet. We do that in part for a living. But the politicians actually need to get hard results for the American people. And so those interests are going to diverge. And we can either push that political order in a good direction or we can push it in a bad direction. But that's going to involve much more real on-the-ground kind of action.
I'll say one other note just from what you said that personally, I don't want a divorce from Canada. I want to conquer and subjugate them.
Yeah.
And make. Yeah. Just to be. They're not a state. They're not a state. They are our serfs.
A penal colony.
A penal colony.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. This is kind of full circle to the dying moose thing. Did that really affected you? You want there to be dead moose all over our northern slave states.
I have held a grudge against Canadians ever since. I blame them for that.
I agree.
Thank you. Christ is Lord.
Amen. Amen.
And hold on, I just want to point out, before we move on, that very, very wise questioner, I think he did, you said you watch my show a little bit more than...
We don't need to...
Is that...
We don't need to harp on that.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay, yes, yeah.
All right, so, long time, first time.
Thank you. Well, hang on a second. Thank you so much. There's one person here who's really got their head on straight. Go ahead.
So, okay, y'all have talked about, political violence and related things a couple of times now, and you've cited some things I'm not specifically familiar with. My question is mainly for Matt. So about 6, 7 or so months ago, you cited this graph in one of your videos. You reported on it. Basically, it alleges that transgender, and I'm just going to use your definitions because I think that's more useful, that transgender biological males are approximately make up 0.769 per million population commit mass shootings. That's the allegation, right? And then similarly, biological female, it says 0.667 per million, and then much lower numbers for every other demographic. So I was curious if you know, looking at this, how many people is that stat based on? Like, how many transgender shooters is that stat based on? Because you cited it, I mean, you didn't cite your source, so I had to go digging for it, so I was curious if you knew.
This is a graph from when?
About 7 months ago. Came up, it was going around on Twitter.
Do I have all the details of a graph that I posted 7 months ago in my head right now?
No, ballpark. Like, ballpark, just approximate.
I guess you have the answer, so go ahead and tell us.
I do. It's one person. So you cited a per million statistic based on one person as evidence that there's some sort of epidemic of transgender violence going around this country.
But there have obviously been multiple transgender shooters just in the last couple of years.
I'm not denying any sort of specific individual instance. I'm talking about this is a statistic in which you compared these numbers for all of these other populations are significantly lower than they would be with actual statistics. I was just curious, like, I want to understand, like, your process here. Why you wouldn't cite that source? Like, is it just because you know it's embarrassing that you only cited it off of, or based it off of one person? Or, like, more to the point, like, why do you have to lie to make your point? You know, why do you have to, if there's this epidemic going around, why do you have to make shit up in order to make the argument?
Well, first of all, I think as someone who believes that women have penises, you're not one to lecture people for lying.
So again, that's your definitions.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Again, I'm using your definitions here, and that regardless, that wouldn't be a lie. If you disagree with me, that would be a mistaken belief, not a lie on my part.
Well, it's either a lie or it's mental derangement.
But you can call that a mental, right? And I can say all of the beliefs that you have mental derangement. It's meaningless. I'm very curious why.
Well, it's actually not meaningless.
Why did you? Well, I mean, I'm saying we can have this back and forth where you're going like, oh, he said that, oh, whatever.
Well, do you want to talk about the fundamental issue, or do you want to spend the entire time talking about some graph from 6 months ago? You want to talk about the issue itself?
I'm interested in it because you, as an organization, purport to share these facts about this ideology or whatever. And here's a graph that you cited, didn't cite a source. When I had to go digging for the source, it turned out to be incredibly embarrassing for you.
Okay.
That's why I'm curious.
I don't think that your interpretation of the methodology behind that graph is correct.
It was a random Twitter user that put it together based on one person.
Okay. I'm not going to take your word for it. Now, do I have...
Anyone can Google it. His name is Frank McCormick.
Am I able to speak for a second? Okay. I do an hour-long show every day, and it's very well researched. We spend a lot of time researching it. There's a lot of data and information in every single show that I do. So if you're going to go back 6 months for this kind of gotcha moment to pull one graph and then demand that I have all the information related to that graph off the top of my head, of course I don't. Obviously, I don't remember that precisely. But what we could do, and so that's all that you're here to do is to get that gotcha moment, then that's fine. What we could do is talk about the fundamental issue. Now, I think the real fundamental issue here is that transgenderism itself is a lie. It's a falsehood. I think that's the real fundamental issue. And built on top of that is the fact that, to Michael's point, it's a lot more than just one trans or trans-connected shooter that we've seen even in just the last couple of years. So we know that it's a lot more than just one. And both of those things are facts. So why do you think it is? Why do we see, put the graph in your hand to the side for a second. Why do we see this interesting trend, given that trans-identified people are a really small percentage of the population? I'm sure you would agree.
Sure.
So why do we have this trend of trans-identified people, trans activists, committing assassinations and mass shootings?
I mean,
I
think it's incredibly simple. Mass shootings are, there's so many of them that take place in various different ways, shapes, and forms. And the ones you choose to report on are the ones that become like embedded in the public image. And so when you, for instance, like you did in that video, and I'm not expecting you to recall every single detail, I'm more interested in the ballpark. You named several alleged transgender mass shooters. And at the end of your list, you had to add non-mass shootings, examples of transgender people committing other crimes to like make your point, right? So I would argue it's not a trend. It's not a pattern of behavior. You're picking and choosing which anecdotes to make your point. And transgender people are such a small percentage of the population that literally any number of transgender people doing anything is going to throw off the statistics.
Well, but this is something that we've observed. It's like, I'm not making it up. We could go back to the Covenant shooting. We could go to the recent church shooting in Minnesota. We could talk about Charlie Kirk. There are many examples.
Well, Charlie Kirk was not shot by a trans person.
He was shot by a trans activist, by somebody who was dating a trans furry and was motivated by his own testimony. And what I would suggest is that there is a reason for this. It's not just random. Okay, when you've got trans activists and leftists generally who are looking at people like Charlie Kirk and saying that he's committing a genocide against the trans community. I've been accused of that many times. Or he's a danger, he's a threat to the trans community. Charlie Kirk got those accusations. I've gotten them many times, even though Charlie never did anything. He never did anything to the trans community. He was never any kind of threat. But when you have that kind of rhetoric directed at people, it doesn't take much for someone to go to the well, if that's true, if this person's a threat against me, then I guess that justifies a violent reaction, and especially when you're talking about a community of people who are already deeply confused and deeply troubled to begin with, and self-destructive to begin with. And then when you go to that particular group of people and you tell them that, hey, you see these people over there, they're trying to commit a genocide against you. They're a threat to you.
So, okay,
and then when the shots start ringing out and you want me to believe that that's some sort of coincidence, sorry, I don't buy it.
So, okay, that's not the argument that I'm making. So, if that's your allegation, that people giving what I think you could argue, you could call those like death warranting labels, right? Like calling someone a genocider or calling someone a whatever is a label that is intended to give someone give
license
leeway
to kill that person.
Sure. Okay. Yep. So if that's the case, I mean, we've sat through you guys describing all of the left as like various disgusting sex perverts, groomers, things like that, which is interesting for your movement in general. But I've watched your show many, many times. You consistently refer to the left very broadly, not even just specific people, as groomers, as pedophiles, as predators, and have argued that pedophiles and such should be killed. Would that not therefore mean, by your own argument, that you are justifying the killing of left-wingers?
Where did I say that leftists in general are pedophiles?
That's it. It's just a broad label you use in your videos. I mean, we can pull it out. It's a broad. You absolutely refer to the leftists.
I've been much more
pedophiles,
specific.
pedophiles, defenders, things like that. Again, you're a Republican, so like that's odd that you would do that. But
why is that odd?
I mean, you're supporting Donald Trump, the man who you openly admitted sexualizes his own children back in 2016 before suddenly changing your position.
When was Donald Trump guilty of pedophilia?
No, I'm not saying he hasn't been found guilty of anything. I'm saying he's engaged in that behavior.
Okay.
And he's endorsed that behavior, more importantly.
He's endorsed pedophilia?
You said he's engaged in that behavior.
What are you talking about?
He specifically described his interest in walking into the Miss Teen USA changing rooms while they were changing. I would call that pedophilia, personally.
you started this by saying that I had accused the left of being pedophiles generally, which I have not done. What I have done, though, more specifically, I have said that, for example, leftists who insist upon or defend the practice of having drag queens perform for children.
Okay, so sticking with those people, should those people be killed, or are you endorsing rhetoric that would get those people killed?
They shouldn't be killed. They should be arrested. They should be arrested and put in prison. See, this is another fundamental difference between someone on the right and somebody on the left, usually, is I don't believe in extrajudicial killing at all. I believe in law and order. I believe in the police and enforcing our laws.
Well, I'm not supporting, I would never support extrajudicial killing. I'm opposed to that entirely. And I'm opposed to people killing conservatives as well. That seems...
Okay, well, I'm glad that you are. So we're on the same page on that. But it's much more likely to have somebody on the left. I mean, defund the police was something that existed on the left, not on the right. So the left is much more likely to take a position that law enforcement itself as a function is illegitimate and must be defunded. And if we do that, then all that's left, I mean, how are we going to enforce the law at that point? All that's left is to enforce it extrajudicially. But anyway, going back to the point, because you brought it up, when I have used the word groomer to refer to leftists, I have done it in specific cases where they are having drag queens perform for children, or where children themselves are dressing up like drag queens and performing for adults, or where children are being chemically castrated and sexually mutilated. In those cases, the adults involved are absolutely sexual abusers and groomers. Would you disagree with that?
I would disagree with that. I actually have
Why?
which part of it? Those are a variety of different...
Are those adults groomers who encourage that?
No. Who encourage any... I mean, there are a variety of different behaviors you gave.
Having adults perform in drag for children, that's not grooming?
If it's in sexual in nature, then that would absolutely be
Isn't drag sexual in nature? Isn't that the definition of drag?
No, I've met a variety of...
You've been to very wholesome drag shows?
I know.
Bring Granny out to the drag show? I don't think so.
I mean, quite literally, I've watched drag shows at, like, old folks' homes and stuff like that. Which
you shouldn't do that either. Don't do that.
But regardless...
don't do the drag for the kids. Don't do the drag for the grannies. Just don't do the drag.
Now you're grooming Granny, too?
Don't do that. Don't.
You brought up that point, though. You brought up the chemical...
Why have drag queens around kids at all? Why do that?
Because it's a goofy art form for the same reason you have any sort of whatever. I don't know. Like,
what's the art?
It's performing. It's like playing a character. Just any old thing. I mean, I go up to Silverwood theme park. I'm sure a lot of Idaho people have been there. They have a show for kids that includes a lot of like sexual and inappropriate content, at least in my opinion. And I disagree with the content of the show. I think it's kind of disgusting. But in context, like, okay, they're doing a magic show and things like that. The magic part of it is not the problem. It's the weird, like, molester jokes and things like that that I think are inappropriate. But you brought up...
We would agree on that. I think we found one area where we agree. That
I've always held that position. I think most people that I know hold that position. You brought up the chemical castration thing, and I happen to be a chemist, so I'm a little bit familiar with this. Do you know what chemical castration is? And, like, could you describe just in the basic principles what that is compared to physical castration, compared to, like, an orchiectomy or something?
Yeah, chemical castration is using a drug that ultimately has the effect of sterilizing children.
What's the drug?
And
what does it do?
Lupron is one of the drugs.
Perfect. Lupron, lupronide acetate, it's about a decapeptide, binds to, it's a superagonist for the GnRH hormone in your body. Essentially what it does is it spikes your body with that hormone signal to tell it to, basically it desensitizes your body to the production of sex hormones. Within a couple of weeks of going off of it, that process is reversible. Now, you can argue there are a variety of other things that may or may not be irreversible.
Why do that to children, though? Why do that to children?
But what I'm curious about, because you use the term chemical castration. Castration is a permanent thing. If you give someone an orchiectomy, as far as I'm aware, you can't undo it. You can't put the balls back on. You give someone Lupron, an adult, a child, a whomever, you take them off of it, it goes away. So I'm just like...
That's not true.
That's objectively
That's not true. That is not true. Okay? That is absolutely not true. You cannot sit here and say, for a fact, that it's totally fine to give Lupron to young kids, and that when they're adults, it will have no effects on them, and that they're
I'm not saying that.
And that their fertility will come back. You cannot say that. That is not true. And the only way to confirm something like that would be to do that to a whole bunch of kids and then just sit back and wait for like a decade or two to see how it works out. And my point is that to begin with, performing those kinds of Frankenstein butchery medical experiments on children is wrong, period.
Why, do you know why we... Do you know...
Now, I just want to point out before we move on that the first guy, he said that he watches my show a lot, and then the trans activist said he watches your show a lot.
Hey.
So I just wanted to remind everybody of that.
We believe in diversity on the Matt Walsh Show. We take all types. I believe in it. You're welcome. I didn't hear that, but thank you.
I'll assume it was a compliment.
Yeah, hopefully. I don't know what I just said thank you to. We don't want men in women's bathrooms, you said? Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Hello. Hi. Oh, yeah, that'd be good. Thank you. Thanks for having me up here today. You both have been strong supporters of Donald Trump, even with his documented association with Jeffrey Epstein and repeated inconsistencies and how that relationship has been described. So my question is simple. How do you continue to defend support given the concerns raised by the Department of Justice failure to fully release all the related files, along with flight logs, Epstein's birthday materials, his shifting explanations for falling out, and other related documents?
Okay, so the first question I would ask on this, because I'm very concerned with political corruption in both parties. It's mostly on the left, but it can exist on the right too. So my first question, which always comes up and that you've alluded to, is that the Department of Justice is covering up the Jeffrey Epstein files under Donald Trump. Now, I would point out that Jeffrey Epstein was prosecuted in the mid-2000s. And so there have been lots of files during the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the Biden administration, in addition to the Trump administration. The only administration that has released any files relating to Jeffrey Epstein is the Trump administration, which is very important. Now, how many files have been released? Was it 3 or 4 or 5? The number thus far is 3.5 million files, which is the single largest declassification in the history of the United States, which is very important context here. Furthermore, one cannot merely declassify all investigations, all emails, all accusations made against someone, because people have the right to be assumed innocent until they're proven guilty. And so you would be committing a political crime, a legal crime, against anybody who is named in this. To your point, you say President Trump associated with Jeffrey Epstein, which is true. He did. The problem is that, like everybody in the United States associated with Jeffrey Epstein, like the whole faculties of the Ivy League universities, the top politicians of both parties, and those associations can be relatively minor or they can be more extensive. If you're Bill Clinton and you were flying around on the Lolita Express for years on end, that would be a much more extensive association than with President Trump. So then I would have to say, when we're talking about President Trump, who has been more transparent on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal than any other political figure in the United States, to the point of fault, I think, because I don't think that we should be declassifying all sorts of DOJ documents willy-nilly. It's an unpopular view, but it's a principled one, and I think it's correct. To the question of Donald Trump, what I would always ask is, what crime is being alleged here with regard to President Trump's erstwhile association with Jeffrey Epstein? And I never really get a solid answer on that.
So first of all, I'll address the Department of Justice's failure. I agree it's very difficult, but there was also numerous cases. The only information that was supposed to be redacted is names of the victim, and...
But what about names of the accused, or the people who are not even accused, but insinuated of committing a crime without any charges and without any firm accusation?
The law is not if you're embarrassed by it, it's victims and then something.
There's no law to keep it as transparent every email from everyone who's ever accused of a crime or not accused of a crime. That's the point. And what's been lost in this saga is the right of people to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. So at the very least, we need to allege a crime that someone has committed. And in the case of all of the hoopla, which is mostly coming from President Trump's consistent political enemies on the left, though there's a little bit on the right as well, my question remains, and I never get a good answer, is what crime is actually being alleged here?
All the stuff that went on
What's the stuff? What's the crime?
Can I please speak? Sorry. Pedophilia, raping children, sex trafficking of women.
What are you accusing Trump of doing?
Trump has been so I'm going to go into this. Trump has been on record lying about not being on Epstein's island, even though there's
no evidence that President Trump was ever on the island.
There are flight logs released by the Department of Justice that show Trump as a passenger on Epstein's jet at least 8 times.
But no evidence that he was ever on the island.
Okay, sorry. Let me keep going here.
Yeah.
My second point is Epstein's birthday card and letter.
Trump allegedly wrote a goofy letter to Epstein. It was kind of tawdry.
Trump said, "These are not my words, not the way I talk. Also, I don't draw pictures." And so let me restate. None of these are solid, absolute 100 guarantees of evidence. But
none of these are even remotely a crime. It's not even close to a crime.
All of them combined create a picture of association.
A bunch of non-crimes vaguely asserted combined make a crime? No, they don't. That's the problem. I am all for justice, especially justice for the victims here, but even the supposed perpetrators brought to justice. I guess the question I keep asking is there a single crime that you can actually accuse Trump of here? The answer is no, by the way, as we've kind of demonstrated here. And so my point is, the accusations against Trump in particular are a political operation used by the left, which has tried every single way to take this guy out of office, by keeping him off the ballot, by prosecuting him for nonsense financial crimes, for accusing him of colluding with the Russians, and then colluding with the Ukrainians who hate the Russians. And they've tried it every which way. The last gasp they had was using a Democrat scandal, which is the Epstein scandal, to attack Trump, who declassified over 3 million documents in this case. And the people who most want to accuse him can't figure out a single crime to actually point to. At which point, I have to say, I think the man has been transparent enough.
Can I keep going here?
Can you? I don't know. I'm waiting for an answer.
I have 2 more points. I'm not trying to prove this in a court of law. I'm trying to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump has associations with Epstein, and these are not provable.
He did associate with Epstein. We all know that.
But I'm saying, okay, here's my third point. Trump said that his break with Jeffrey Epstein came out in 2004 after Epstein took a young woman who worked at Mar-a-Lago. Trump said, "He took people, they worked for me. Once he did that, that was the end of him." Days before making this claim, Trump also said that he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago for being a creep, presenting different versions of his story. The girl that was stolen from him, he explains in the clip that he's talking about.
An employee, not a girlfriend.
An employee.
Yeah.
That was stolen from him was 16. This story is not consistent with his framing. This story is not consistent.
The claim is that President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein had a falling out because both over a girl and over a business transaction, which in your telling of the story are consistent. Right?
I'm saying he's saying 2 different points.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Because I agree with what Michael's saying. I fully support releasing the Epstein files, I always have, and I think it's good that they did it. I also think that there's no evidence in the Epstein files of Trump committing any crime at all. I want to ask you, though, are you, do you consider yourself conservative?
I do not, no.
You do not?
I do not consider myself conservative, no.
You do?
Sorry, I do not consider myself conservative.
Okay, so are you liberal or just sort of in between?
I guess I could be classified as liberal. I try to think for myself, but...
Okay, yeah. Great. Well, and you should. So, in thinking for yourself, why do you think it is, because you're concerned about the Epstein files, why is it, it's weird, that this was not an issue? There was almost no push by anyone to release the Epstein files for the entire 4 years of the Biden administration. The Biden administration had the Epstein files for 4 years. We hardly ever heard about it. And certainly we didn't hear about it from a single Democrat in Congress. Not a single one. No one in the media, and really almost no Republicans. For 4 years of Biden, no one said, we want to see the Epstein files. And then Trump gets in there, and 10 seconds later, we got to see the Epstein files. Why do you think that is?
I should have done more research on this part, but I believe the limitations of releasing the files ran out during Donald Trump's administration. Is that correct, or am I totally off base on that?
Repeat that point. I couldn't hear you.
I believe that the limitations on releasing the files stopped during Donald Trump's administration. So they were not able to release them before, and then the statute of limitations ran out during Donald Trump's administration.
The President of the United States, going back to the Bush administration, could have released documents if he wanted. Don't forget the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, such as it is 20 years old at this point. So to Matt's point, he says, it's kind of funny, isn't it, that no one asked for this during the Biden administration, but you could extend that further. No one asked about this during the first Trump administration or the Obama administration or the Bush administration. So why is that? And the answer is because the Democrats have and people on your side of the aisle have completely run out of ways to go after Trump. They've spent 10 years going after it. And so the best they could do is cook up a Democrat scandal, which initially mostly centered around Bill Clinton, and try to put it on Donald Trump. And Trump called their bluff because Trump released 3.5 million files, and you still got nothing. I asked you at the top, is there a single crime you can point to that Trump has been even accused of here, and you don't have an answer?
I think that's ridiculous. I don't need to accuse him of a specific crime when he has an association, deep personal friends, plenty of pictures online of him with Jeffrey Epstein. This is my last point here that I'll make.
We'll get that last point soon. We'll get the accusation soon enough. Someday.
So we're doing about 25 minutes per question, so we should be here until about next Thursday.
Hi, guys. It's very great to meet both of you. I've watched a lot of you, Matt Walsh. I like a lot of what you have to say. Michael, I've still got to check you out, but I'm sure you're great.
That's payback. That's right. That's payback. It's very painful. Payback is very painful.
I feel like a lot of what we've been talking about tonight is Republicans needing to stay united in voting red. But my question is, if you could answer this, aside from the Democrats being objectively worse, why should we vote for Republicans when they are pushing a war in Iran that does not benefit the average American?
Well, and I agree with you about the war in Iran, totally.
Good man.
I thought it was a mistake from the first moment. I said so. I still think it's a mistake. And my question about it was from the beginning and is still now, what are we getting out of this exactly? How does this benefit? I'm a very simple-minded person, I admit that. And so my first question when it comes to, especially to geopolitics, is how does this benefit the American family? An American family sitting around the dinner table in their home, how does it benefit them that we're going to war in Iran? And that's never been explained. I think it's because it doesn't benefit them. So then you ask the question, well, then how do we justify voting for Republicans? Is it just because the Democrats are worse? And my answer is, yeah. I mean, that is my answer, is that the Democrats are obviously objectively a lot worse. And I wish I could sit here and tell you that, well, vote for Republicans because the Republican Party has a long history of actively and passionately advancing our interests, but they don't. I'm not going to lie to you. They certainly don't. I mean, even now, the SAVE Act is the most important piece of legislation that's been deliberated about in Congress for years at least, and it's not going to pass. They're just not going to do it. Republicans could, but they're just not going to do it, and I think that's totally unacceptable. But the other option, we have to live in reality, and the only other option, if not Republicans, is to have Democrats in power, and it can't be them because, and I again, simple person, so I have simple reasons. Why can't it be Democrats? Well, because they want me dead, and they want you dead. I mean, that's actually what they want. They consider conservatives to be Nazis, to be They want to criminalize us, and they want us dead. And on top of that, while Republicans, I think, are not nearly good enough at conserving what they should be conserving, what should we be conserving as conservatives? We should be conserving the institution of the family, marriage, the sanctity of life, our nation. We should be conserving all of these things, our traditions, our heritage. They're not nearly good enough at conserving those things. Democrats, on the other hand, are actively seeking to destroy and dismantle all of those things, and they'll tell you that. And so, obviously, the other option, if one option is let's dismantle and destroy Western civilization, I'm going to take the other option. That's my argument for
I would go a little further. I mean, I agree with that. It is sufficient to just say we just can't let the Democrats be in power because they do mean us harm and they are openly calling for our harm and they have harmed us. On the war in Iran, I share many of your views because I did argue against the strikes before they happened, and I expressed my skepticism when they happened, and I remain rather concerned. There is a potential upside. This is one of the complexities of geopolitics. The potential upside is that Iran has been destabilizing in that region for a long time. President Trump was able to do something incredible, which was to unify the Gulf states, pull them even further into our sphere of influence, have them make peace with the state of Israel, which has always been a sore spot in the region, and to take out the mullahs, who are a regime that is giving a lot of advantage to our geopolitical adversaries like China and Russia. So if you could have a pro-Western regime in Iran, that would be really, really great. I'm skeptical of the reasonability of success and proportionality because they're a very durable regime. But we have been trying to move Iran since the early 1950s. Persia's been an important place going back to antiquity. So, you're never going to totally get yourself out of that issue. Beyond a war that is debatable, I'll use one example. Under Joe Biden, the Department of Justice was partnering with the SPLC to invade Catholic parishes, to spy on them, and to put pro-life grannies into prison because they were praying at abortion clinics. Today, just a year or two later, President Trump is sending the DOJ to prosecute the SPLC, the very people who were ordering the government to make enemy lists of all of us. That is a massive shift. We talked earlier about, under Joe Biden, 3 million illegals coming into the country every year, barely any deportations. Now we have none of those 3 million, and we have 2 million deportations. That's a very serious net gain. Under Democrats, they are passing legislation to permit infanticide up until the moment of birth. Under President Trump, because Republicans won, and thanks to cocaine Mitch McConnell in part two, we overturned Roe v. Wade, which is not the end of the pro-life fight, but it's a very big advancement. So things can really happen. There can be material advancement, and they can happen very quickly. I'm reminded of a line from Cardinal Manning who says, "There is a day to come that will reverse the confident judgments of men." And so when we talk about issues like the family, maybe overturning Obergefell, when we talk about issues like encouraging childbirth, which President Trump has done with his revolutionary Trump accounts, one of the best economic policies of my lifetime. When we look at these kinds of things, we say this can have major effects, but it requires consistent winning again after again after again, even when the Republicans irritate you, because the Republicans are the worst political party in the United States other than the Democrats.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. Hey guys, thanks for coming. Yeah, I hope not to be up here very long. I guess I'm pretty simple. So, Matt, you said that if not Republicans, then, Democrats, that's no good. And Michael, you said, what did you say?
It doesn't matter what he said.
Yeah, hold on. Wait. Yeah, it was so emotionally moving, he was arrested by my words.
Yeah, I just have to pee, so, but, yeah, but... So I'll just forget about it, but both you guys as practicing Catholics, there seems to be rising issues with the President of the United States, with the blasphemous tweet or truth, the pushing of the nation to a war with Iran, which is not just war. I think you guys agree.
I think it's up for debate. I'm a little skeptical because of the probability of success in regime change and proportionality, but I think there's a strong argument that it is a just war, so I think reasonable minds can disagree.
All right, yeah. Well, with other MAGA figures also taking up very strong anti-Catholic positions, and it seems there's kind of like an evangelical capture, and the war in Iran, especially if it takes a bad turn, I would say that the MAGA movement overall is at very high risk, and in my opinion, I think is dying. And I know you said that we can't have, if not Republicans, well, I guess my thesis to you guys is that we restart the Whig Party. If you're not...
Restart which party?
The Whigs? The Whig
no,
Party.
the Whigs were kind of liberal, so you'd want to restart the Tory Party.
But
I don't know if anyone's going to join... Yeah.
What, national banks, strong tariffs, staying out of wars.
Yeah, well...
I think... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, finish.
Yes, I have to pee. I think myself and... what do you say? Like, myself and other Wigger... sorry, I don't know.
You sold me just for the pun. You sold me for the pun. I'm in. We got to start the new neo-Whig Party.
We do, because the Whig Party captures, I think, everyone in this room. No new wars, good protectionism, tariffs. So myself and other, I don't know what you would call Whig
Whigs
members.
with attitude, I think is what they call them.
Yeah, this is a Whig.
Yeah. But we would have to say Whigga, obviously.
Myself and other Wiggas believe that MAGA is dying.
Yeah.
So we should restart the Whig Party.
It's a very good question, and I think it expresses whether you want to be a Whig or not. For all my Wiggas in the room, there are plenty of.
I'm a Wigga. I'm a Wigga.
Maybe some Tories. I don't.
Yes.
But I
Wigga,
think,
please.
It expresses a consistent impulse, which is, man, the political reality sucks, so can we start something totally brand new? And unfortunately, it's actually meaningful that you chose the Whig Party here, because the Whig history was traditionally the more progressive party, and it was usually the more left-wing party, though parties are really also products of their time, which is why some parties go away and new parties form, and why we can't just go back in time. And so the deeply conservative impulse, I think, is that it's much easier to destroy than it is to preserve, than it is to build. And there's a temptation to say, burn down the GOP, it sucks, I need a new party. But one, it's very difficult to build a party. Two, people are not totally united on the points that you brought up. There's a strong argument for tariffs, but in certain cases, and overwhelmingly, most conservatives are more in favor of free trade or tariffs as a negotiating tool to bring us free trade. And so, weirdly enough, the two parties as they exist today, I think, are actually relatively coherent. To your point on Catholics, being kicked out of the GOP, I don't think we're at any risk of that. We currently have the first ever practicing Catholic vice president in American history. That's pretty good. We have Catholics all over the administration. You mentioned that unfortunate Truth Social post from the president. Well, I'm very happy to say he took it down. And President Trump never takes anything down, and he never admits that anything was even slightly inappropriate. So the fact that he did that, I thought, was actually pretty meaningful. I don't see a big divide between the Catholics and the evangelicals. I am a mackerel-snapping papist, okay? I am rather Catholic. I come from a line of Puritans and Protestants all the way back to the Mayflower, which is an excellent cigar, by the way. But, thank you very much. But it's I'm very, very Catholic, and I love arguing with my Protestant friends, including Charlie, for that matter. We love talking about religion. But the Catholics and the Protestants cannot divide in the GOP. I think that would be so short-sighted. We should have our theological debates, and I can't wait to bring you all to Latin Mass, but we cannot divide. The evangelicals are a wonderful, reliable, conservative voting base. There is no Catholic-only party in America, just like there's no evangelical-only party in America. And guess what? The secular leftists want to kill all of us. They want to prosecute us. They want to persecute us. And yes, in many cases, they wish us violence. So I think, look, it would be satisfying, it would be cathartic to just tear it down and start the Michael Party, where everybody believes exactly what Michael thinks. And look, we might get at least a few dozen people to join it. But unfortunately, politics does require compromise. It's the art of the possible, the art of the second best. We are winning now. We have had massive wins because of the people in this room, and I am not willing to give up on it yet.
Yeah, those are great points. Those are great points. I guess I just like the idea of the Whig Party because I think at least more than a dozen people here would like to consider themselves Whiggas.
Whiggas, yeah.
No new wars, like for real this time.
I will say, to one other point you made, you said you think MAGA is dead. Oh, and yeah. I wouldn't say MAGA is dead. I wouldn't phrase it that way. But I do think that, and Trump has said this himself, that MAGA is Trump's movement.
Yeah.
MAGA is the Trump movement. That's what it is. And so what that means is that, you know, he is no longer going to be president in a couple of years. And so that means that, yeah, he is going to take the MAGA movement with him. I don't think that there's a MAGA movement in the post-Trump GOP. That doesn't mean that it died. It just means that it's moved on, just like Trump has, right? And so that speaks to the fight that we need to have in the Republican Party about what is going to define. We know what's defined the Republican Party for the last 10 years. What's going to define it for the next 10 years? And now's the time to get into that fight. And if you start and you run off and you try to restart the Whig Party, or you go join one of the other dozen other, independent parties that already exist, you've taken yourself out of that fight. Now is the perfect time to get in that fight and get into the conversation about what the next 10 years of the Republican Party is going to look like.
Yeah, I'll go.
Amen.
I'll just get like one last thing, and then I'll go. I don't want to take much time. So I think we've reached like an agreement then. So after Trump goes, I think the Whig Party should come in.
You just like the name. You just like
No, I've been doing a lot of research.
We can have red do-rags or something.
Yeah,
that'll replace the hat.
Wigs, but I think it can replace MAGA as the Republican powerhouse. That's my thesis to you guys. That's all I have to say.
All right.
Thank you.
Rob, thank you.
Hope you guys are doing good. Props to you for wearing suits. It's fucking hot in here.
It is hot.
It's a lot of body heat from all these people, but which is good. We want the auditorium to be full.
Oh, yeah. So my question revolves around the use of liberal for, like, the Democrat Party and left-leaning people, considering they kind of go against the traditional sense of what a liberal is, individual rights, limited government, free markets. They're kind of going away from that in its entirety. So is it necessarily accurate to still call them liberals, or should we find a different term?
I know there are a lot of people on the right, especially libertarians, who say we shouldn't.
That's me.
Yes. And they say we shouldn't call these leftists liberals because they're totalitarian and they oppose free markets. So I get it. I see that observation. I think the reason why it's fair and helpful, actually, is because socialism, communism, all of these other left-wing ideologies are derivatives of liberalism, even the classical kind of liberalism. Because the problem with liberalism in all of its forms is that it has a false view of human nature, that at risk of oversimplifying, says that man is fundamentally an individual, that individual autonomy is the most important and maybe the exclusive political good, that therefore consent is the only moral consideration, and you should just, you do you and I'll do me and stop telling me what to do. That is the origin of all of those left-wing ideologies. And I would say I reject all of them. But I'm not on the left, and I'm not a liberal either. I'm a conservative. I don't think the fundamental unit of politics is the individual. I think it's the family. I don't think the point of life is autonomy. I think it's virtue and sanctity. I don't think that we just invent ourselves and define our own conception of goodness. I think God defines what is good, and I think that we can understand a lot about what is good and true and beautiful using our own human reason. And I think we live in community, and we want flourishing communities. So we don't want to be leftists, but we don't want to be liberals either. We want to be conservatives, which is a beautiful thing to be.
And I think we should also remember that your average liberal, leftist, whatever, isn't worried about those distinctions, and I think in many cases doesn't have very much of a coherent worldview or certainly political view. I think we could do away with both labels, and rather than leftist or liberal, we could just call them Satanists. because that is, in fact, what they are. Like, that's what this thing is. And I don't mean that just as an insult, although it is. But I also mean it's an appropriate label, because Satanism is not the worship of Satan. Satanism is the worship of the self.
You know, to your point, Matt, in Paradise Lost, which is about Satan, John Milton writes this, a classical liberal, and Satan is like the perfect classical liberal who says, I just do whatever I want. It's better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven.
Yeah, and that's because Satan, to be a Satanist is to worship not Satan, but to worship what Satan worshiped, which is the self.
Yeah.
And that's what left, liberal, whatever words you want to use, that's what this thing is. It is the elevation of the self as supreme above all, which is one of the reasons why abortion is the highest sacrament of liberalism, because it's the ultimate statement of it's the ultimate form of worshiping the self, where you are literally sacrificing your own child on the altar of selfhood. And so that's what I think this the thing is.
Okay, so basically we could rename anyone right of center common sense, and excuse my French, but anyone left just fucking delusional.
And satanic.
Yeah, I mean,
he also said satanic.
Yeah,
I think being satanic and delusional kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my only question. I hope you guys have a wonderful night.
You too.
I thought the questions were supposed to be 45 minutes each. That was very concise.
We gotta do 21
minutes. I want to give other people a turn, you know.
Very courteous.
Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, hello. My name is Nathan. I am from Libtown, Seattle. Gross. I know, right? I know. I don't like it there either, but I spent a lot of time around very left-wing people, and they are very stubborn and difficult to have conversations with. The other day, I was talking to someone about the immigration crisis, and personally, I know that my grandma can't get a doctor's appointment because of all the Sudanese people in her neighborhood who have West Nile virus or something. So my question is, how do I, or in your experience, how do you break through like stubborn, like left-wing arguments that people just refuse to, you know, swing away from? Like
I just smack them until they listen. That's what. It's a joke. Don't do that. As we say, we don't do political violence.
Yes.
It's hard for me to claim that stubbornness is unique to the left. I mean, on occasion, I've been accused of being a bit stubborn. So yeah, I know it's unbelievable. I do try to, in spite of everything we've said about the left up here, that they're delusional Satanist pedophiles. In spite of that, I try to be generous to them, and but I do on an individual level. You have to understand that it's really hard for someone to admit they're wrong about something, and we've all been, even I've been wrong on occasion about something. It's hard to admit, and then to admit not just that you've been wrong about something, but that your entire worldview is fundamentally wrong. You've been fundamentally wrong, and the entire way that you view the world and yourself is extremely difficult. It takes an immense amount of integrity and courage, intellectual courage and moral courage to do that. And so that's why on an individual level, if you're talking to somebody on the left, I think it's, and provided that they're being somewhat reasonable in their interaction with you, it does call for patience. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is, you know, I did a whole movie where we're just asking a basic question the entire time. And I found that to be an effective tool. I mean, especially the deeper someone is in their sort of delusional state, just ask them questions about, we've seen examples of that even tonight. Just someone makes a statement, it's obviously not correct, or they don't know exactly why they're saying it. It's like, why do you say that? Where are you getting that from? And I found that to be really effective, especially on a personal level. It allows them to analyze their own position, and it's very unlikely that in the midst of the conversation they're going to say, you know what, I think you're right, I'm wrong about everything, I apologize. That's probably not going to happen.
Ever. Not once.
Ever. But there's at least a chance that if you ask them a question, a basic question they should be able to answer, not some gotcha trivia question, but something about their own beliefs,
that they can't explain, there's at least a chance that will plant a seed in their mind. They'll go home and they'll think about it like, geez, why couldn't I answer that? Why was that more difficult than it should have been? And maybe that sprouts into something in the future. Most of the time it won't, but there's always a chance.
Yeah, because look, your question, not to flatter you, it pains me, but the what is a woman question was a brilliant bit of politics because it's so innocent and it's very hard to answer if you're a lib. And so it did get people thinking. Today, Brandon Gill, a great superstar in Congress, freshman in Congress, he did this brilliantly while grilling an abortion advocate. He said, well, what's your favorite kind of abortion? And it's a brilliant question. He went in to describe all the grisly kinds with vacuums and razors and forceps and clamps. I mean, they're all grisly. That's what abortion is. It's killing a baby. But that question was brilliant. It was very much in the line of what is a woman. Because if you're an abortion advocate, surely you must have a favorite kind of abortion. You advance abortion. You advocate for it. But no one can say, well, how dare you ask if I have a favorite kind of abortion? Well, why? Why? What is so gross about that? What is so repellent about that idea? And it gets them to think. And in order to ask that question, look, you can be winsome, you can be nice, you can wink at them, you can be real cute. But fundamentally what you have to do is you need to establish for these people, and I hope it's sincere, that you want what is good for them. You actually have their good at heart. You know, when St. Paul says you can have all the virtues, but if you lack charity, you have nothing, he means it, and he's right. So charity is willing the good of the other person for his own sake. And when you're describing something to someone, when you're asking them a provocative question, if you can convey to them that you actually will their good, you know, even we were talking about the transgender thing, and because of our protester friends out there, when you come out and you say, look, I want transgenderism to go away, I want it to be eradicated from public life entirely, for your good, for our good, but also for your good, if you can really convince them of that, at the very least, they'll listen to you, and if you can ask them a provocative question, a la, what is a woman, it might get at least a few of their remaining brain cells to start firing again, and then you might change their mind.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Also, last thing, Matt, you should cut the chops, the mutton chops. I think that'd be a good look for you. Whoa.
Wait, what?
Get some mutton chops, man. You got the big beard for it. Just give it a try.
You want me to, what, you want me to cut?
Yeah, get some mutton chops, man, like World War I
Well, then he'd
general.
have to shave the beard.
It comes back.
Well,
live vivacious.
I was getting ready. I was like raring up. I was very offended. But you're advocating for mutton, not to shave entirely, but to do the mutton chops.
No, of course not. You've been blessed, Matt Walsh. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Try the chops. You won't look back. I promise.
I think I've broached the mutton chops conversation with my wife on a couple of occasions. Shockingly, she's very against it. I've tried to show her, like, look at all these Civil War generals. They look very dashing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. She's opposed. So.
All right. Well, just think about it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
God bless.
Thank you.
Hi, Matt and Michael. My name is Nevaeh Souza. Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much for carrying on with these campus events and keeping the dialogue open. Just earlier today, I went to talk to some of the girls that are protesting outside, and I realized it's very hard to get people to accept that open dialogue, so thank you. So I'm the result of an unplanned out-of-wedlock pregnancy. 1/3 of Gen Z has been aborted, and I'm on the other side of that, where my mother did choose life. And so now 19 years later... So 19 years later, her and I are partnering now on a pro-life children's book to counter the propaganda of the abortion industry and to try to advocate for the lives of the unborn. And I was just wondering what your advice is for Gen Z youth who is pro-life to go out and actually turn words into action and change minds and hopefully save some lives. Because when I went outside earlier today, I was talking to girls who were my age, and I asked them just curiously, what is it that you're protesting against? And the only topic that came up was abortion.
Well, I love that you bring this personal testimony out, because it's very important in politics. You know, we conservatives, we love our facts and logic, but politics is not only about facts and logic. It's about spirit, it's about credibility, ethos, and it's also about appealing to emotion. And so it's very easy for someone to go on television, a pro-abortion lib, to go on television and say, listen, if a woman gets herself in trouble and, you know, the guy runs off and he's not going to marry her or pay child support, surely that woman needs the right to kill that kid.
Yes.
And when someone like you comes out, very articulate, very nice, and says, hey, I'm that person. You know, I'm the product of that. And what you have just called for is for me to be killed. Do you think I should be killed? Would it be better if I were killed? Would the world be a better place if I were killed? Do you wish my death?
Yes, the circumstances of my conception did not determine my value.
That's right. And I think that personal touch, you know, the pro-abortion movement thrives at this point explicitly and exclusively on euphemism. They cannot state what they're doing. They don't even really use the word abortion much anymore, which itself is a euphemism. They'll say it's reproductive choice, it's women's health, it's whatever. You know, I call my granny, I say, hey, Granny, how you doing? She says, well, at least I can still have abortions. No, that's not what she means by health. She obviously... health is something totally different. And so you have to cut through the euphemisms, which are just ways to cloud people's minds and take over their thought. And the way to cut through a euphemism, the way to cut through those kinds of debates, is to say, hey, guys, it's me. Should I have been killed or not? Would you like me dead or not? And that can be very, very effective. And we shouldn't shy away from that. You know, we want our logic. We want our... That's all on the pro-life side already. But we have to appeal to people in the heart as well, and I think you can do it beautifully.
And I would say two other things that you can do that we should all be doing is, first of all, to get, as you have been, get out there, get out on the street, support your local pregnancy centers, volunteer at them, support them. Your pregnancy centers all across the country, they're doing God's work. Some of the, you know, I've worked with a lot of pregnancy centers around the country and with fundraising and speaking at their events and that sort of thing. Some of the best people I've ever met work in these environments. It's a thankless job. There's no money in it. And they do it just because they want to save babies and help women. So do that. Show up to the clinics, you know, holding vigil outside of the clinics. 60% of abortions now, about 60%, are not even being done in the clinics. They're being done through the abortion pill, which is insidious and sinister in its own right, but still showing up to the clinics really matters. So that's really important to you know, on the street level activism. Pro-lifers, conservatives in general have historically been really bad at that. Pro-lifers are the exception. Pro-lifers are great at it, and it's why pro-lifers have been notching win after win after win. And then the second part of it is, you know, having families, like getting married, having kids, showing that it's a wonderful, beautiful thing to have children. I think it's one of the most effective ways to fight back against the culture of death and the celebration of abortion. Like, there's just no way when you hear the way the left talks about, to Michael's point about euphemism, the way they talk about unborn children, using the word like fetus, which is just like Latin for offspring, so it just means like it's not a child, it's an offspring. Like, okay, or a clump of cells. You know, and then when you have children, you see how absurd that characterization is. This miraculous, beautiful child, you're calling just a clump of cells. Go to your local Walmart. There are a lot of people walking around far clumpier than your average infant, first of all. So, and I love Walmart. Walmart's great. But, you know, that kind of language, if you're going to use that language, you could apply it to any person. But when you have kids and you start a family, to Michael's point about the emotional part of it, the spiritual part, there's a logical part. We know we have that, but it just becomes that the arguments for abortion become on their face just absurd and grotesque when you can look at your own family and your own children and compare it against that.
Absolutely. You know, the other thing you have to do, we would be remiss if we didn't say it, the other thing you have to do is to pray. My friend Father Benedict Keeley points out prayer is not the last resort, prayer is the first resort. And, you know, this is something, I know we're over time here, but this is something a lot of people, when our fearless leader was killed, a lot of people wanted to purport to say what Charlie would have thought, what Charlie would have done, what Charlie would have wanted for this issue or that issue. And, you know, I think I speak for Matt here, too, which is even if we have a view of what Charlie might have said about this or that, that's not our place to say. You know, Charlie did his part, and now, you know, we we pray for him. The one thing that I do know, though, is that faith is the most important thing to Charlie. It's what he most wanted to be remembered for. I know with certainty that he would absolutely tell everyone to continue to pray, to treat prayer as the first resort, to recognize that our country will be one nation under God, or we won't be a nation at all. And that is the beginning, that is the source and summit of all of our national greatness and our personal greatness. And that is ultimately what is going to guide us, not just to the terrestrial homes that we have on earth, but it will guide us to our heavenly home, which is where we're all after as well. That this politics is really a way for us to get back to where we all belong together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one more thing I wanted to add was, I don't know if you remember, but I've met you guys a couple times at the backstage at the Ryman, and we went to the Daily Wire studio, and Matt was actually on my parents' podcast. We are going on a book tour later this fall, and we'll be back in your studio. So we are wanting to get on Michael's show. We were wondering.
I'm in. That was the best pitch I've ever had. If you ever want to get on my show, show up to a room of 1,500 people and pitch it on air. You're in. You're in. I'll bring the cigars.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm told there are going to be 2 more questions, and then we're getting the curtain.
Awesome. Well, first off, thank you guys so much, Matt and Michael, for coming to Idaho. Isn't this awesome that we have this in Idaho? I feel like we don't have anything out here. But thank you, and I love that about you guys, and I also love that you guys aren't afraid to talk about God. And I know that was one of Charlie's big things, and that's just one of the things that I love to talk about, and one of the things that I'm most fired up about. So I have a question for you two that I would love to pick your guys' brain on, because I'm not sure if you guys have responded on this elsewhere. But one of the most important questions that I think that we as people need to grapple with is, do you know for sure where you will go when you die? And I would like to see what you guys think about that question.
He's going to hell.
I hope not.
Would you ask if I know where he's going when he dies?
No, you.
Oh,
you were
me
to
personally,
say,
yes.
Do you know for sure where you will go when you die?
I don't.
Okay.
I trust and I have hope in our Lord. I trust in Jesus, and I consider hope to be a theological virtue and a demand, not just a nice feeling, but a demand that goes along with faith and charity, without which we have nothing. However, I know that God respects my free will. And so God saves me. I don't save myself. God saves me. His grace comes down the mountain and reaches out to me despite all of my failures. And then when I cooperate with his grace, my life is really great. And then I screw it up. And I screw it up again and again and again. But I know that God absolves me. He gives me a way to be absolved. And he tells us this in the Gospels. He tells to his apostles and to their successors. He says, receive the Holy Spirit. You have the power to forgive sins. Whose sins you forgive are forgiven, and whose sins you retain are retained. He gives us a visible church and sacraments, and he allows us to take himself into us, the only food that does not dissolve and become like us when we eat it, but it actually makes us into him. So I know all of that, and I have great confidence in that. And I know my own frailties, and I pray to God to preserve me from temptation, as the Lord teaches us in his prayer, in the Lord's Prayer. But I know that I have free will. I know that there are sins, all of which are unrighteous, as St. John tells us, but some sins are mortal. Some sins are deadly. They can sever that saving grace. And so I pray that I don't fall into temptation. When I do, I say my act of contrition. I pray to God personally in my room, and then I run off to a box to tell a priest who I believe that God has appointed in his stead. And he says these words through the sacrament, a sacrament which is a visible connection of the metaphysical to the physical, of God to man, to say, ego te absolvo, I absolve you of your sins. And then I go about and I cooperate with God's grace, and life makes, not only do I look forward to heaven, but life makes a lot more sense in that way, which is why when I say my act of contrition, I say I'm sorry for my sins because I dread the loss of heaven, and I dread the pains of hell. But most of all, because my sins offend you, God, who are all good and deserving of all my love. And I recognize that sin is always prowling for us, but there are these guardrails that are not just technicalities, but they're a way to preserve a relationship of grace, a pure relationship of grace that God offers to me, that God willing I will persevere in to the end of my life, such that I can say, I've kept the faith, I've finished the race, and I get to be with God forever.
Yeah. You got to let me go first before you give your fancy, Ivy League answer, and then I got to
They don't believe that in the Ivy League. I promise you. I promise you that.
No, all that well said, and I agree with all that. I think that, we're running up into a kind of a bit of a Catholic versus Protestant distinction here as well. Scripture says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And to me, that means humility. And so we have to have humility. Hope is a virtue, humility. And humility means, I would look at it like this. When you die and you've departed your mortal coil and you're standing before the King of all creation, the King of the universe, are you going to kind of strut confidently into that meeting and say, hey, well, I'm here, I'm saved, let's get to it? Are you going to strut confidently up to God? Or, because I think I will be on my knees before the Lord in abject, absolute humility, throwing myself at the mercy of God, who knows everything. I don't... Do I know for sure where I'm going to go when I die? No, because I'm not God, and I don't know all. Only God knows that. That's information that only God has. That's a judgment that only God can make. And so in that meeting, when it comes, it will be glorious and beautiful and beyond imagining, but also terrifying, and a moment for absolute and total humility, throwing yourself on the mercy of God.
Yeah, thank you guys for your answer here. And one of the things that I love about this question is trying to getting down to it and also seeing, people can have a lot of different ideas and have a lot of different opinions on things. So one of my perspectives is let's go straight to the Word to get everything that we need to know about this question. And I liked how you mentioned, are you going to strut into the presence of God and all the rest of that? But 1 John 2:28 tells us, beloved, abide in him so that when he appears, we may have confidence before him. And the Bible says you can have that confidence. And 1 John 5:13 tells us that you can, in that you need to know that you have eternal life. He says, I've written these things to those who believe in the name of the Son of God, that you may know that you have eternal life. And this is one of those things that I think when you go to, and maybe when we can set aside, listen, y'all tear down liberals all day long for not having their facts grounded in the truth, right? So we can all agree on that. And one of the things that I think is when we go to God's Word as our ultimate standard, and we go specifically to the one book of the Bible that's written specifically to tell people everything they need to know about how to get eternal life. That's the book of John. Purpose statement, John 20, 30, and 31. To tell them everything they need to know over and over again. The message is simply that you believe in Jesus for eternal life, and you will never perish. You will never hunger, never thirst, never come into the judgment, never escape out of God's hand. You will never die. And the witness of Scripture tells us, listen, there's nothing like knowing for sure that you will be with Jesus forever. And I think that's one of the beautiful things. And if you are out here today and you don't know for sure, I just encourage us in planting those seeds that you go to the Gospel of John, that you read and just ask the Lord, Lord, is it just as simple as I simply believe in you and you make me this promise
But
and I think we
what
all
about,
can agree.
This is beautiful that you bring up the Gospel of John, and obviously all of these very long-standing, centuries-old theological debates over whether or not we have free will, whether God respects our free will, whether we the importance of sacrament. But since you bring up John, what about John chapter 6, in which our Lord tells us that if you do not eat the flesh of the Son of Man, gnaw on the flesh of the Son of Man, you have no life in you, because the flesh of the Son of Man is true food, and the blood of the Son of Man is true drink. And this was so scandalous that the Jews went away, and many disciples went away. And our Lord turns to St. Peter and says, you do not go away. And what does St. Peter say? He says, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of life. Exactly. A phrase, this is a very hard saying, and it was always understood from the first century onward to refer to a real sacrament. As Justin Martyr tells us in the first apology, along with many of the other fathers of the church, that they're referring to the Eucharist, that the Eucharist is the true body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. So much so that when the pagans don't understand it, and that St. Paul then later tells us that if you do not discern the body of Christ in the Eucharist, you're eating your own damnation. Something like this seems rather crucial, and furthermore, even beyond the point of Eucharistic theology, which interests me greatly and I hope everyone believes in, but even beyond that point, it suggests that there is something that we must do. Not that we're earning our own salvation, but that God is calling us to do something and to cooperate with him in a real way in our bodies, because we are in the suspended time of history, in time and space, and that there actually are stakes to this, and that we ought to make sure that we're always listening to the voice of God, that our Lord, as the second person of the Trinity, is always listening, always receiving from the Father. In the Garden of Gethsemane, most perfectly perhaps, always listening to the Father, always trying to do his will and to conform our will in our actions, our free will and the things that we actually do in the world, that we touch, the sacraments that we have, with the will of the Father. This seems to me crucial as well, so that we don't take anything for granted.
And I would add to that you're saying belief. We have to believe in Christ, and then we can be confident that we're saved. And so, and it's true that these are theological debates that we're not going to solve in the next five minutes. But it seems to me that the question really becomes, well, what does it mean to believe? And is belief merely an intellectual and emotional assent to a proposition where I'm saying, oh, sure, I believe that. Yeah, Jesus is Lord. I believe that. I'll buy that. And is that all it means to believe? Or if we think of Jesus as for this analogy anyway, as a bridge into eternal life, do we only have to look at the bridge and say, sure, the bridge is there, I got that? Or is the belief also in the walking, in the trusting Jesus and putting your full weight on the bridge over that great abyss, the walking part of it? And I would say that belief is in the walking. It's in the doing, you know? And that's why, I mean, you could point to the Gospel of John in certain passages. I would point to, all of Scripture, and certainly all the Gospels. Point to the Sermon on the Mount. Every passage in the Gospel, it's just loaded with instruction on the way that we are supposed to live and the things that we're supposed to actively do, because I think that's what belief means. That's what it means to believe in Jesus Christ, is to do the things that he says and live as someone who believes. And that's why ultimately I can't know for sure, because I can know what I think. I can be really confident about that, and I can know what I feel. But can I be the ultimate judge of my own actions? No, only God can. And that's a judgment that God will make.
Thank you guys so much.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bryce. I came here from Billings, a 10-hour drive. I want to be a priest when I grow up. I just wanted to ask, what would your advice be?
Don't be a Jesuit. I don't mean to no, there were good Jesuits sometimes, and that's great news. How old are you?
10.
This is like the biggest white bill.
Why? I think it's a wonderful thing. Why have you decided you want to be a priest?
kind of just because God's calling me.
Awesome. Love it.
That's
Love
amazing.
it, man.
That's beautiful.
You know, this is great. This is so wonderful. I don't need to give you advice. I think you at 10 years old probably need to give me advice. This is really great. There are many moments when you work in politics, you feel jaded. You say all hope is lost. The culture is dying. No one has the right ideas anymore. And then you meet a 10-year-old kid who says, I want to serve God and be a priest. And you say, guys, we're going to make it. You know, we're just going to make it.
I mean, in the form of advice, the only thing I would say is to continue doing exactly what you're doing right now, which is that you're answering the right question, which is, what does God want for my life? Now, most people, kids and adults, most adults, if you were to ask them you ask them what they do for a living or how they decided to live, what their lifestyle is, and they'll tell you, and you ask why, and they'll say something along the lines of, well, it's what I want to do. It's what I felt would be the best for me, or something like that. But the real answer, what we should all be doing, what we should all be trying to discern, is not what we want to do, but it's why has God put us here? I mean, God created all of us, which is an amazing fact, that we were all created. We are all intentional creations of the Lord of the entire universe, the God that made by hand tens of billions of entire galaxies, also created all of us. And he did that for each of us for a specific reason, to come into this world and do something. And that thing is going to be different for everybody. And so our job first is to prayerfully discern what that thing is, to ask God. It's like, I know what I want to do, but God, what do you want me to do? And you're already asking that question. You're getting an answer. Continue asking it and continue being open to God's answer.
You know, we have been here for almost 2 hours. And you even, tell me your name again?
Bryce.
Bryce. We have been here for almost 2 hours. And Bryce comes up with this beautiful statement and question, and then Matt, in typical curmudgeonly fashion, starts grilling him on it and says, well, why? Why do you want to do it? And at the end
a priest?
At the end of 2 hours, he is a priest. At the end of 2 hours, we get the most concise, wisest answer of the entire night. I want to do this thing because God is calling me to do it. Out of the mouth of babes, this is exactly what TPUSA is about. This is exactly what Charlie was doing, was inspiring an entire generation. One of the most beautiful answers I've ever heard at any event. Thank you so much, Bryce. Thank you to all of you for being here. Wonderful to be with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very kind. Thank you. Thank you very much.